Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all, and welcome to this installment of the EarthWorks podcast, hosted by me, Jack Higgins. How gracious was our guest, Josh Saunders of Lancaster Country Club, to spend 1 hour with me on a video call on his birthday. In this conversation today, you'll get to hear Josh and I talk about Lancaster Country Club and the plans they have to host the Women's Open in 2024. You'll hear Josh discuss the challenges that he has with a course that's prone to flooding. He has to manage many different turf types, particularly in the rough and the intermediate. And there's also a really interesting section about the two different type of root zone profiles that he manages across the 27 holes of his golf course. And you'll hear him talk about some of the changes he's made on the golf course and some of the things he'd still like to accomplish before he hosts the women's tournament. Did you see the video yesterday?
Yeah, I saw the one where I should come mow your yard.
I've got two mowers and neither of them are working right now. Well, actually, the National's working. It's just that it's at a local golf course. It's at East Orange Golf Course. I had to get a new roller put on it, and he sharpened the wheels for me. It's pretty nice. And then Joel gave me his old lawn tractor because he moved like kind of into Lambertville, which is kind of like a little town. He's a townie now, so he doesn't have a yard. So he gave and that needs a new battery. Oh,
sounds like a lot of excuses to me.
Yeah, you're right, because I do still have a push mower.
There you
go. Okay, so Josh, I really appreciate you taking the time here on your birthday.
Hey, yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
Hey, I appreciate it. 32 feels really good. Really good.
That's good. That's good. So, okay. Well, what some of the things I wanted to talk about today was you I'd say recently, but it's been what, 2 years that you've been at Lancaster Country Club?
I started February of last year, so just a year and 2 months now.
Okay, cool. So you're going to be hosting the women's US Open in 2022?
24.
Okay, 2024.
You gotta give me a little more time to prepare, Jack.
Okay, well, that's exactly what I want to talk about because you got to the golf course. You had at that point 5 years to get ready.
Yep.
And what I want to discuss is kind of what you saw when you started work and what your vision might be for the tournament in 24 and kind of the changes that you'd like to make. And you prepared some pictures that I'll be able to put on screen here, and we can discuss some of the work you've done and some of the work that you still want to do.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, man, good deal. And we can discuss some of these pictures. So let's start. This is kind of just a view of the golf course. Tell us a little bit about Lancaster Country Club. Yeah, how old's the course?
Well, the course was originally founded in 1900, but Flynn came in and built it in 1920. So it moved from a different location during that time. And he built the original 18, and then I believe in the early 30s, we purchased a part of land on the other side of the Conestoga River and rerouted the original 18 to form holes 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the Flynn course. And then in the early 90s, the club built another 9 holes, which is known as the Highlands 9. Great old classic traditional layout, typical Flynn design with topography, pinch points and greens. Just a really, really special property. Blew me away during the interview process. And then getting the job, I was very fortunate, very lucky in what I inherited. I inherited an unbelievable staff, a staff that I would put up against anybody in the country, believe it or not. Agronomics were sound and good. It was just a few tweaks. I think that's kind of the beauty of our industry. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. No one's, truly wrong at how they go about things, and no one's truly right. And that's why we get to rely on our peers in the industry to brainstorm and network and make decisions and make things better. But what it really did for me, Jack, is it kind of allowed me to approach the place knowing how great the operation was and how sound the agronomics were. It allowed me to kind of approach it from a different view during the interview process and during my first few weeks. I mean, of course, things jumped out at me that I wanted to change, but I didn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. So
that's great.
It kind of allowed me to go hole by hole and think of things that I could do aesthetically to make the place better. Agronomically, things that I could do to make the place better. How to improve the growing environment with tree removal, how to improve playability with drainage.
Well, now we'll be able to get into that because I know you provided some pictures that kind of discuss those exact things. Before I take this picture down, tell us what hole this is. Is this on the main 18?
Yep, that's on the Flynn course. That's number 1 from the white members tee. Just looking right down the fairway as we're doing morning setup.
Cool. Par 4, 2 fairway bunkers and kind of a classic Flynn setup with a lower bunker on one side of the green and a high bunker on the other. Is that right?
Got it, buddy. You got it.
In my short greenkeeping career, I also worked at a Pennsylvania classic Flynn design, Lehigh Country Club. Not too far down the road from you, about 70 miles.
Made it there, but I've heard good things about it.
You'll get there. Okay, so let's see.
I think Joel's supposed to line that up, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
He is. Okay, here's another cool shot, just of the golf course in play time. This must be from a tournament you hosted?
Yeah, that's a member guest last June. That's our 16th hole, which is the signature hole of the course. Was recently in the Gap Ultimate 18. Great short little par 4. That picture is taken from the very forward tee, which was actually used, I believe, I'm sure I'll get called out on this. I think it was used in the final round of the Women's Open in 2015, in which Michelle Wee was in one of the next to last groups, drove the green and all that good fun stuff.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Great short little par 4 with a lot of thoughts off the tee, whether to lay up short of the bunkers where you see the carts in the fairway or pound a drive up into the neck and have a little flip wedge into the green. So,
but it is awfully protected there in the approach.
By far, probably my favorite hole on the property.
Oh, that's great. So, some of the things I notice here is your detail work at this point last summer was really on point, but I know that you really put a lot of effort into that, especially through the springtime. I'm seeing how pure this rough looks, but that's something that we can discuss because I know that you've provided a picture of some POA in the rough.
Yeah, there's a little bit of POA out there, but I think, that's common with a great old classic golf course. I mean, when a golf course has been maintained for, 100 years now, I guess, right?
Yep.
You're going to have that that stand of healthy POA in your rough, it's just going to be really hard to eradicate. I mean, just the perfect seed bed. So, I remember very, very vividly this time last year, calling a lot of my peers and just kind of just being blown away by the amount of POA in the rough. I mean, I came from Pittsburgh, which, arguably could be the POA capital of the world. So
Sure.
not that I was uncommon to the plant, and whether it be a nuisance or something you want to maintain, I was just extremely overwhelmed with the amount I had in the rough, because knowing my marching orders to, keep POA out of playing surfaces, how was I able to do that with the amount of population I had in the rough?
Now, what's your irrigation coverage out there?
It's wall to wall. The club invested into a state-of-the-art system. Yeah, a couple of years ago. Sorry, long week.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. So if you do, if you do want to eradicate this POA, or what do you think is going to be your process moving forward the next 5 years to try and get things as pure as possible going into the tournament?
Well, it's definitely going to be a process. And I mean, I think you just pegged it. It's yearly. I mean, if you go to some of the other pictures of the POA, especially in the rough, I mean, you can truly see it.
Okay, so talking, Josh, about the POA in the intermediate here.
Yeah, so to my point of working from tee to green, with playing surfaces, this is what really jumped out to me this time last year, because what you're seeing there is from our seventh fairway, which unfortunately, as I refer to our membership, has the dreaded F word occasionally throughout the year.
Okay.
Too much, too often, to be honest with you. Sorry, I had a call. But so a lot of this fairway has been sodded. A lot of this fairway and intermediate cuts been sodded throughout the years. So here you can clearly see the definition of low mo blue that was put in the fall of 2018, after just an awful year here in the Lancaster area with rains. So you can see kind of an idea of what a lot of the intermediates look like on the rest of the property because of POA and bent grass contamination. So my mindset, immediate thoughts right out of the gates was, I have to do an intermediate project. To me, there's no more important cut on the property than a walk path and intermediate cut, because it truly frames the golf hole.
Absolutely.
So if it is clean and pure and perfect, it's going to provide that definition for everyday member play, for your tournaments. And, for me, I have to have in the back of my mind how we're going to look on TV. So we're going to start that project this fall with sodding out all our intermediates and walk paths throughout the property.
That's cool. So we're also here, I guess we're looking at photo of some more.
Yeah, that's just some, just to show the POA population in the rough. I mean, I know I speak for a lot of old classic traditional courses that I'm sure they're seeing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the next picture, Jack.
Let's see.
You just missed it. That one, yep. So these are some side spots of stump holes less than 2 years ago. So
Wow.
you can clearly see, how much POA. So what can I do to limit the POA in the rough? That's never going to happen, right? So unless I go through a complete rough renovation, which is, bucos and money, whether I'm sodding or whether I'm spraying or what, you're talking a lot of money. So my mindset is, what do I need to do to prevent the POA from getting into my playing surfaces?
Yes.
So obviously I've started to go aggressive with seed head sprays. I've done test plots throughout the property last fall of 19 and this spring to develop a game plan moving forward, for seed head prevention, wall to wall, basically, on the property.
Is that so that's into the rough as well? You'll spray it out seed heads?
Yeah, I'm going to start spraying everything.
And will that include a fall application as well as spring applications?
You know, going back to my Pittsburgh days, I never truly believed in the fall application. You
Mhm,
know, like, why do you want to punch something when it's already down, right?
mhm.
Like, you're going to go out, you're going to put out these growth regs, these, seed head preventions for the spring, but you're also going out and putting a harsh product down on your plant when it's dealing with frost, it's going into dormancy. So I was always a little hesitant about it. I mean, if you remember from your time hanging out with me and coming to me all the time out in Pittsburgh, I was always one of the first to really take his foot off the pedal in that,
Mhm.
because I really believe in the natural process of the plant going into winter and then coming out of winter before, we start beating it up a little bit. Um, so I think what's encouraging is like these products that are coming out with Exonerate and PoaCure, that to start playing around with these products in season to get after the POA. Obviously, water management is going to help the most to start reduce. I think that's the key word, not eradicate, but reduce the population and introduce more fescues into the rough over time. Um,
Excellent. So it will, of course, be an overseeding strategy as well, trying to get the right time to get the turf type tall fescue in the rough.
right. Like, I remember when I first started at Longview, Pete, my mentor, Pete Went, and we talked all the time about like, when is the right time to seed?
Hmm.
It's even good for like regular Joes and homeowners. Like, we're always taught seed in the fall, right? Seed in the fall. But all you're doing is disturbing that POA seed bed.
Yes.
You're going in and you're aerifying, or you know, you're taking a seeder and you're breaking that top profile. All you're doing is allowing yourself the opportunity to have more POA come, spring. So I think that's the age-old debate. I don't know if there'll ever be a right answer, Jack.
Well, I mean, my 2 cents on it is that if you have good irrigation coverage, is there a wrong time, or is there a wrong time to establish your turf from seed? Um, so there might be a wrong time for dealing with the competition, but if you can water, then you can germinate.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it.
Right, right. So I'm saying, like, even throughout the summertime, when that POA doesn't do it very well at germinating, maybe, because you have good irrigation coverage, maybe you can germinate, your turf type tall fescue at that time.
Yeah, that's the route we're going. I mean, obviously, with my water practices, with truly believing firm and fast, we lost some POA in the rough last year,
Hmm.
especially in that stretch of July through mid August where we didn't get much rain. It was typical mid Atlantic heat and humidity. And, we lost some POA in the rough. So we went out and started seeding those areas. Absolutely. Um, and, I think that's just going to be the process that's going to continue each year, in addition to seed head prevention, not only on the playing surfaces, but in the rough. And I'll tell you, this is the first time, last fall, the first time in my career that I went out with Benzimec pre-emergent in the fall with the sole mindset to prevent POA on the playing surfaces. And I don't think anyone would argue we had a absolute textbook winner for POA, right?
Yes, yes.
And,
So fairly warm, wet.
and my Flynn greens are pure right now. I mean, no POA, no new POA. I'll put it to you that way.
Great.
That compared to my other playing surfaces, I think there's a lot of merit to it. And I think it's something I'm going to do moving forward, especially on surfaces like tees because of divots or aggressive verification, where POA tends to come back a little faster or POA populations increase more than others. Uh,
Hmm.
I definitely think there's some merit to fall Benzimec applications.
Now, moving on to you mentioned losing turf in the rough, and also just the intense POA pressure that you have. I'm sure that events like this have something to do with it.
Oh yeah, that's the dreaded F word. Uh,
Okay, that's the F word we're talking about. Yeah, flood.
yeah, flood. I try not to say it that much. I think in 18 they had 11 floods, 10 or 11 floods.
Wow.
We had 4 for the entire year in my first year. It is April 23rd. I should know that date, but
Happy birthday again.
thanks. Um, and we've already had 3 this year, so I'm not
Holy cow.
too optimistic of the season thus far. But yeah, the Conestoga, she tends to show her teeth quite a bit, and it's not so much the amount of rain that we get right here. It's the rain that happens north of us. So this is down. That's a picture of our 6th green and 7th tee. And what it is we have Stauffer's Run coming off the through the 4th and 5th and 6th holes that feed into the Conestoga. So when the Conestoga's high and beginning to crest, the run starts to back up. Therefore, water continues to back up through that whole stretch of holes.
Wow. And when is this, in the fall?
Yeah, that was in early October.
Wow. Wow. Let's see, any other cool flood pictures are cool to me. I don't have to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah, similar, right? Is this 12?
This is 7. That's number 7 fairway.
Okay.
So that's the same picture as I mentioned earlier with the intermediate cuts. You can obviously see why at times they have to do some sodding on those holes.
Sure, because where's the edge of the fairway? Where's the intermediate? Right here, kind of where my cursor is, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yikes.
It kind of, it reminds me of Willy Wonka.
Yeah, how so?
The Chocolate River.
That's right.
He
Good
kind
and
of
brown.
right to the situation. I mean, I'll never be able to prevent the flooding here. I don't think anyone would be able to. So you kind of have to make the most of it, I guess, at this point.
Well, let's talk about what you do to try and prevent that flooding. Let's see. Maybe we'll show some of this drainage work.
Yeah, so we did a lot of drainage projects in-house over the winter. We actually have Mott here now doing a pretty substantial drainage project for us on our 13th hole. But, when I got here, probably 3 to 4 areas just really jumped out at me as far as needing drainage. This is our approach on number 8 Highlands. And, it was bad to the point where, there was bare soil and obviously hadn't been mowed in a while. Bent grass was shin high from where mowers were going around it, et cetera, et cetera. So, we went in a bit pretty extensive drainage here. You go to the next picture, Jack.
Sure.
This is our second fairway on Highlands, where it basically had settled off the irrigation pond, and water wasn't basically there was no surface runoff. So, just a huge area that was bare and high grass that hadn't been mowed and holding water. So we went in and stripped it, brought in material, and basically regraded the entire left side of the fairway.
Wow. Did you also put internal drainage in, or is this all surface?
This is all surface on this particular project that we did this past winter. The contour and the slope of the fairway didn't really you didn't really need internal drainage. Also, the pond that you see to the left of the cat there is our irrigation pond. Because we're constantly pumping from the river up, that pond is always full. So it's almost impossible to put internal drainage there because it would be below the water line. But then on our seventh hole, which you thought was so cool to see the flood, we went into each swell and put in 6-inch and 4-inch drain basins to help with the cleanup process. Where Todd is cutting sod there and we're putting the sod down, those areas were all just completely bare. I mean, had some grass. Because of the process in 18, and I know it was out of the control of the staff, of washing the silt. Silt had built up so much in those lows. Water wasn't allowed to exit fast enough, but it also killed the existing grass.
Wow.
We went in and stripped out those lows, lowered them a little bit, put in these basins with the mud faster into the basins, faster off the turf to help alleviate losing turf in the rough and in the lows over time.
That's cool. Now the silt, was that something that you were able to see when you cut into the profile, or did you do some physical analysis, or?
You could clearly see it. I mean, there was layers upon layers from just years of flooding. And this is our current project on 13 right now, where we're putting in a creek, a drainage type ditch going across our fairway to help with surface runoff off of our neighboring properties.
Now, will this change the way the hole plays?
Yes and no. From the middle of the back tee, it's going to be about a 180 carry over the ditch. It's a par 5, long par 5. Well, it will be a long par 5 now, about 550 uphill. From the white tee, it's probably about a $150, $145 carry. So really shouldn't be that big of an issue unless, they have your game. Or,
That's right.
Or
it would intimidate me off the tee, that's for sure.
Or someone's just really trying to hunker down and kill it, and they actually pop it up or something in that nature.
Now the professional ladies in 2024, they'll play off of that white tee. So
I would think they'll probably play off of the new blue gold tee, the new back tee.
Okay.
That new back tee is about 530 to 555.
Wow.
So I would think that would be their number. But that's the beauty of USGA too, and the parity of their setup. I'm sure they'll move them up one day, and so it's just gonna provide a lot of different shot value for them.
That's cool. Okay, so Josh, we're looking at 2 different profile shots here. What can you tell us about them?
So the one on the left is from our Flynn greens, which makes up the championship course. Okay. And then the one on the right is from our Highlands 9, which is a Poe and bent mix set of greens, constructed in the 90s. The ones on the left were rebuilt in 2011, USGA spec. So obviously, looking at the pins, you can clearly see the difference in the top sections of both profiles. I'm actually a big fan of the one on the right. I know this is your expertise, Jack. But the cleanness, is that a word? Clean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a word. Hey, it's my birthday.
That's it, dude. It's for you.
As my assistants would say, it's just another Yoshism. But anyway, when you look at those top 2 sections, obviously the biggest difference and why there isn't so much buildup in Flynn is because they're newer profiles. But the one on the right in Highlands, the area in between the pins, not so much if you look at the contrast in browns, kind of the darker shade, but that top section, just how clean it is. No layering, great infiltration. and enough organic matter there to protect and
Yes.
provide playability, to provide firmness, to protect from wear, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't have that luxury on Flynn. Um, the greens with soil test are all well below 1% of organic matter. And it showed this past season when we were in mid-season, July or so. I mean, a lot of spike marks, a lot of ball marks, just
Right.
no ability to withstand that type of pressure. Um,
So that's kind of how you need some of that buffer there, not just for the greenkeeping aspect, but also for keeping the green to keeping the green clean from really nasty craters and ball marks, so that by time that August and September and October come, you don't have a surface that's totally pocked up. Is that what you're saying?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think so. Look, here's the fine line with organic matter, right? I mean, you can have too much or you can have too little, right? So, and I think what the common misconception is you cannot have organic matter. You can't. It restricts drainage. It doesn't allow water to infiltrate. You can have firmer playing surfaces if you have no organic matter, right? I mean, how many times have we all heard that?
You hear it over and over. Yes.
But you know, in all reality, some organic matter is beneficial to providing excellent playing surfaces. You just stated it, in allowing wear, recovery from ball marks because they don't explode, foot traffic. Also, from a soil biology approach, all the
Hmm.
goodness and funness that happens within that layer, you know. So there, it's just a fine line, and having enough that's good, but not too much that's bad. And I don't really know how to word it any other.
Well, yeah, I completely understand. I mean, and also not all organic matter is equal, you know.
Mhm.
You could talk about a really thatchy organic matter that is going to further hurt your playability. It's going to further make it more difficult to maintain, a good surface, and as the greenkeeper, is you're gonna chase a lot of more wilt with that thatchy organic matter. Or you can have more of a humified organic matter, more like what we see on in the right picture, where you'll gain a lot of the benefits of that humus, both agronomically and then also, as we discussed, the playability side of it.
Right. And I think, you have two picture perfect examples of both scenarios that you described right there. I mean, when you
Hmm.
left, you can see the layering that's common with newer greens, right?
Sure,
I
sure.
mean, you're going to get thatch build up. You're going to get build up in that layer, in that top layer, because they're new surface, they're new profiles.
Hmm.
So that's why, I knew kind of right from the gates that I needed to kind of get Flynn more towards the pitcher on the right, um, just from an overall playability and plant health standpoint.
Cool. And you're well on that, well into that process. I mean,
Yeah,
what
I mean,
what are
with
some of the things you're doing?
yeah. So if you go to that next email with the profile,
Yes.
so in my first year, I did not pull a core at all on all of Flynn. All we did was 3/8 soliton and adjusted the dry eject machine to be in the top. Um, just to really try to break up that layering that we just previously saw in between the pins,
Hmm.
to help with drainage, to help with infiltration, but also to try to, for a lack of better words, muck up that top profile. Um,
You didn't pull a core because you didn't really have any organic matter to pull out.
yeah, for the most part, absolutely.
And you didn't want to further destabilize that root zone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So And, I think the practices work, that in combination with the program. I mean, the picture on the right was taken just before aerification in August of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we can see some of that humification starting to happen.
Right. And it's not just the length of the roots there too for that time of the year that, make
Sure.
me happy. It's the fact that that core can stay solidified like that and not
It's stable.
right. Yeah, it's not just falling apart. You know,
So now when someone's bombing one in from like 100 yards up in the air, and landing on that green, you're not gonna explode the top half inch of the root zone.
right. I mean, over time, you can't, Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's
So
right.
it's going to take another year or two of those practices for them to truly be where I think they can be. But I think the membership was happy with the leaps and bounds they made in year one. With Flynn compared to Highlands, all three aerifications this past year, I pulled a 5/8 core on Highlands. When I did my initial soil test, Highlands was anywhere from 2.5% to 3% organic OM compared to Flynn being less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first year or two, I kind of wanted to balance that, to be really aggressive on Highlands, to try to play catch up, to get them, comparable across the board amongst all three nons. And we saw some success with that. Our OM numbers percentages dropped, not substantially, but a little bit on Highlands this past year.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, I guess you don't want them to drop too much, but as long as they stay relatively stable there, you're happy.
So cool, like that's a good thing, or cool like you like the floods?
Cool, like that's a good thing.
Yeah, making sure.
Cool for you and for me. Oh man. So, well, we were able to get through a lot of these photos, I'd say, right?
Yeah, only other thing I would say is just, the other big thing that we've accomplished, and you got it, is the tree removal.
Cool.
This is probably one of the biggest projects we did thus far, is located to the left of our second green. This picture was taken again in the middle of August, right before aerification. That's at like 9:30 in the morning. The tree management program prior to my arrival was phenomenal. There are three greens on this property that don't ideally have the best growing environment. We're kind of married to the situation on two of them, our 5th and 12th holes, but two here was the third. And, by simply going in and removing some trees, we're going to get us about 2 to 3 hours of additional morning sunlight.
Now you said this is at what time of day?
It was right around 9:30.
Wow. And so all of these trees in that grove went down?
Yeah, if you go to the next picture there, bud, you can.
All right, let's have a look.
Before, after.
There you go.
Yeah, so obviously it's a little bit different of an angle, but, in the previous picture, you wouldn't have been able to see that house.
Exactly. So this is where they were removed.
Right. So, and it opened up a great view of our 7th hole. Just now you have this huge panoramic view coming off the 2 green. And I think as a superintendent director, everything is plant health first. It's agronomics first. But when you're selling a membership on something, having the ability to express the importance for plant health, but also provide an aesthetic feature, is only going to win them over. especially in such sensitive times with tree removal. And we have a couple other projects in store with thinning some herds and reducing some tree lines to increase airflow and visuals and sight lines and et cetera, et cetera. But huge difference in properties for me and what I inherited at Longview compared to here. I mean, the tree management program prior to my arrival was pretty phenomenal.
Well, I think that I've heard you cover a whole number of aspects of your job, and and a lot, and we really didn't even touch into personnel, but you mentioned a lot about the playability of the golf course, the agronomics that you're dealing with in terms of the root zone profiles, the managing the drainage and the flooding, the managing the turf types, and that kind of leads into the aesthetics that you mentioned. You talked about how the intermediate cut and the walk path really frame out the whole golf course, and really, or certainly the golf hole, but really the golf course. And further on aesthetics, you talked about how you really manage a total experience for the golfer on your property. Like,
Right.
like this tree work that you did here off the second hole, it augmented. Not only did it help with agronomics, but it augmented the experience for the golfer.
Yeah. So, I think for me, when a golfer, member, guest set foot off this property, when they hold that last putt on 18 and they go into the 19th hole and have that cold one, or they get in the car and head home with their buddies, I want them to reference the golf course condition wise, but also the experience. And to me, the experience encompasses conditions, aesthetics, the wow factor. And, I think it's a pretty special feeling when someone can make comment on that, wow, this place could host a championship tomorrow, but man, what an amazing piece of property. Because that's telling me that, not only the work I'm doing, but the work that my predecessors have done prior, and the history and tradition of this club is standing out, and has stood the test of time for everyone that set foot on this property. And I think aesthetics and playability, in my opinion, are the two driving forces for me on a day-to-day basis. It's the attention to detail, and how is this golf course playing? As a superintendent, I kind of want to beat people up a little bit, you know what I mean? Bring them to their knees a little bit when they're out there.
Sure.
I hope a lot of my members don't watch this, but
Well, they're golfers. They expect it.
I mean, it's a challenge. And I think, this property can be a challenge. And therefore, I want to maintain and provide the playing conditions that provide a challenge for them. So, when they four putt number 2, they may complain as they're walking off the green, but then all of a sudden they're going to see this beautiful panoramic view, and they're going to forget about it by the time they get to number 3. That's the way
Absolutely.
I look. So I think in order to be successful, especially at this point in my career, I have to find a great balance between both playability and aesthetics. And as long as I can continue to do that, I think we're going to do well.
I think you're exactly right. Josh, I really, really thank you for taking the time, especially on your birthday. Happy birthday again.
No worries.
This was fun. I think that this is going to be a really cool podcast for everybody. So thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. And thanks for the invite. I love my relationship with the entire EarthWorks family. I'm a big believer in the products, but not only that, the people. And I just kind of just want to say hello to everybody. I know we're going through tough times, whether you're a big private club or a small, just a small outfit. And I know I speak for everyone that we look forward to see people out there playing golf again. But, also remember to take care of yourselves. It's going to be a long year. It's not starting off like any of us envisioned. And I think it's very important to try to take a step back and realizing we're just at the start. All this could pass and we're going to be right in mid-season form. And we all know how stressful that is. So just, make that effort to take a little time for yourself during this period and stay safe, stay healthy.
Very good advice, Josh. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate what you said about us at EarthWorks. We're very grateful for our relationship with you too.
Absolutely. Just get me on at Lehigh and I'll be happy.
You're there, buddy. Yeah, have a good night. Enjoy them tomahawks.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
All right, see ya.